So here's the blueberry cake we just made. This is what it should look like when it comes out. And next we're going to be making pumpkin cake. You know, it's a little ridiculous to make this much cake in one day, but we only bake on Saturdays. So same thing, we're going to review the ingredients and kind of our plan and be familiar with everything and have everything together so that we can efficiently create the cake. So this one is a little bit tricky. You have to heat the oven to 450 and then it bakes at 450 for 5 minutes and then we reduce to 350 and bake for 16 to 17 minutes. So you have to be careful and make sure that you don't open the oven. You set the timer and you go and reduce the temperature and just leave it. I like about the pumpkin cake is it just feels good going through the system. There's a lot of nutrients in it. And it's really moist. It's a really nice moist cake and it's not too sweet. But, so if you're trying to give up eating pie, these are the options, right? We don't have pie anymore. We have these. Because cake, the way you make it like this way is more nutrient dense, not necessarily healthier, but you don't have butter and you don't have like overly processed flours, depending on how you make your pies and cakes. So the way that I'm going to do it is same way as the blueberry, but this is going to have cinnamon, cloves, and a lot of other seasonings. So that's going to take a little bit longer. This is cloves, but the label fell off. There's not much. It's going to be going in the garbage soon. So we start out with the flour again, and we want to mix the dry ingredients in a large container. So we have 1 cup of dark rye flour, half a cup of oat flour, and then a 1/4 cup of flax meal, oat bran, and hemp seeds. So it's the exact same thing. You'll notice that you have the same base. So I'm going to measure this out. I know in my blueberry video I didn't, but I'm just going to show you that that's 3, 4, 5, 6. About 6, maybe 7 spoonfuls. But because we're putting so many different flours, I'm just going to do that one. So 6 is about 1 cup. We're going to do 3 for a half a cup. So this is the oat flour. And that was the rye flour. And we're going to do just 2 of the oat bran. 2 of the flax meal. This helps keep it nice and moist. And then hemp seeds. Always hemp seeds. We'll do 3 of the hemp seeds. They don't really affect the moisture. It's kind of like almost like putting nuts in it. And then this one actually has you mix the brown sugar with the wet ingredients. So that's kind of how when you make cookies, you mix the oil or the butter with the sugar. It kind of makes that base. So next we're going to do 1 teaspoon of baking soda. So this doesn't have baking powder. Has baking soda, and I usually keep my baking soda in the freezer. Makes it last longer. And then half a teaspoon of salt. Do I have half a teaspoon? This one does have half a teaspoon. And that's a lot of salt. You can leave it out. It's optional, but it does affect the, how everything comes together. It's an important ingredient. If you're trying to cut back on salt, I get it. My mom used to do it all the time. So now it says 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and 1 teaspoon of cloves. But I put some other stuff in it. So 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Here's the cinnamon. So it doesn't fit in. This makes it kind of hard. You kind of just roll the container. And if you go over, it's like, well, just be careful. Some people measure these separately because otherwise you have an accident and you dump like half of the bottle of cinnamon in here. So like maybe measure over a smaller bowl. if you're, you know, new to baking and you don't want to make that drastic mistake. And then cloves, we don't have much in here. It's more like a 3/4. It's pretty much done. Let's just finish it off. These are really not going to show up as much as you think. I do allspice, so I'll take a 1 teaspoon and I'll fill it like maybe 1/4 to 1/3. Allspice is kind of sweet, but the nutmeg gives it like a bite. So I put nutmeg and ginger in, which it doesn't call for, and it's about probably 1/2 teaspoon. And the ginger and the nutmeg give it a nice bite. I like it. Haven't had any complaints yet, but if you want to try it without and then add them, like it's your world. I'm just living in it, you know. You get to pick how you do this. So let's just sum it up. So that was 1 cup of dark rye flour, 1/2 cup of oat flour, 1/4 cup or two big like large spoonfuls of oat bran, flax meal, and then 3 of the hemp seeds. We haven't done the sugar yet. And then we did salt, baking soda, and then all the little seasonings and cinnamons and nutmeg. It says pumpkin pie spice originally, but I didn't have any. And all pumpkin pie spice is a mixture of those ingredients. And I really like ginger. Ginger's good on your tummy. Okay, so we did all the dry. Now it's on to oil. I did use this for my last blueberry, so there's a little bit of oil left, but some of it stays in there, so it's really okay. You're gonna be okay. So we're gonna do 1/2 cup, seeing this common denominator, and then I'm gonna do a little bit for my homies, and then brush it around. There's a little bit of water in here from the pan was in the cupboard for a while, so I just rinsed it off. I should have probably dried it, but it's fine. It's gonna be okay. Some stuff matters a lot, some stuff matters a little bit, so we're gonna care that much about it today. Okay, so now we're gonna do 1/2 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and again, this one originally came with a lot. It had a maple icing and a crumb topping. I'll add those, but it's a lot of sugar. It's a lot of sugar, and this calls for butter. You can use coconut oil instead if you're trying to avoid dairy, which I normally try to because it makes me have acne. That's really the only reason, because I love butter. Butter is delicious. So it's up to you. But I'll put it all in there, and you can try it because the crumb topping and the maple icing is absolutely delicious. But I did find an easier way to get the same effect without having to do all those steps. There's a lot of steps. And it can be like, oh my gosh, it's taking me an hour to make this, but it is delicious. So I'll put it in there, but you'll have my video of the way I kind of cheat it. So it's 1/2 cup of sugar. And you can do it packed or not. I put a little bit more in when I'm not making the crumb topping and the maple icing. And then it's 1/4 cup of milk and 2 large eggs, which I'm not using milk. I'm going to use 1/4 cup of water. So I just put the eggs right in there. Now, you can get bad eggs, especially if you have chickens and you get eggs from your chickens. You want to break them in a small container, make sure they're good, then pour them in. Somebody who was a cook in the military told me that's, you know, because you put 1 bad egg in it and you ruined everything. You've got to start over and throw everything out. So keep that in mind. 2 eggs and then the 1/4 cup of water. I just got a glass here because we're all just normal people, right? I poured a little too much water, so leave a little on there. Okay, and then we add the puree. So I get a large can of pumpkin, and then I'll save half of it to make 2 batches. So that means it's only gonna be good for about a week. So I have to make sure I make 2 batches in a week. It's a lot, but it's so good. And you can eat so much of it, you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ate this much. But you feel less guilty because it's not as much sugar and it's got pumpkin, right? So this is a lot more than they call for. They say 1.5 cups, and this looks like it's probably closer to 2 or maybe 1 3/4, but it just makes it more moist. And you can play with it, but I found that, I mean, I made this multiple times, and it turns out great every time. If it, you might, the only thing is you might need to cook it a little bit longer. If you take it out, and it seems a little, maybe gooey. It's kind of like banana bread. This kind of replaced banana bread. I have a good banana bread recipe, though, I should do, but it's so much better with butter. I just can't bring myself to make it without butter. So I just suffer. Break those yolks. Okay. So this is pretty much it. If you don't do the crumb topping, and then you can make the icing if you want right after you take them out of the oven. I don't have any powdered sugar right now, and I'm trying to minimize all the ingredients I buy at the store just because it's annoying. So I'm going to just use brown sugar. Last time I used brown sugar, it worked great. Whoa! Runaway egg, I caught him though. Okay, so now we got the flour here. We're gonna mix these together. You want to gently fold. So I kind of mentioned in the notes on my other video about the blueberry raspberry cake, I mentioned gently folding. So I'll show you what that means. And if you are slower and messier than me, just got more time. So you take around the outside and then flop it in the middle. And you can rotate the container as you do it. And you can kind of see. Go in the middle too. You just don't want to be like, oh, crazy mixer. And by doing this, you keep it all inside. If you go all crazy, like, you know, you can just be messier. So you want to be gentle. Develop your patience. All right, and it tends to, it's like cheesecake kind of, where it tends to be better the next day. And I think it's because the seasonings, you know, the clove and everything kind of, and cinnamon just kind of marinate in there. Bring out the flavor. Like gingerbread cookies, usually you'll make it and let it sit in the fridge for a day before you actually cook them, so they can really absorb those. You could put molasses. You could drizzle molasses in this. It would probably be really good. But so I did a big pan, but you can do it just like the blueberry cake. You can use 2 pans. And remember, this one is tricky. You want to make sure that you reduce the temperature but leave the oven closed. I've been making brownies, which are not healthy at all. There's a ton of sugar in them. But I was burning them, and I realized I'm so used to these ones that are at 400 degrees. The brownies were only at 325. So really make sure you're double checking the temperature, because if you get the temperature off, it could be disastrous. Then you have brownies that are supposed to be delicious and they're burned every time, which is not good. Maybe I'll make brownies for you. I'm trying to not do that anymore because they're not, it's too much sugar. And then I eat too much. It's not good. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to try something new this time. I'm going to sprinkle some brown sugar on top before I bake it, so I don't have to make but I really like that maple flavor. So normally I'll just mix brown sugar with maple syrup and then spread it on top. But I have some maple syrup right here, and I'm just gonna drizzle it. This is hard. Drizzling is hard, so don't feel bad if you can't drizzle. Now, I don't know if this might burn. I have no idea. But it also might bake up, and then the maple syrup fall into it and make these little pockets. So we'll see what happens. It's an experiment. So remember, this goes in the oven for 5 minutes at 450, Then we leave the oven closed, reduce temperature to 350, and then cook or bake for another 16 to 17 minutes.